Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Forum's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. DRF Handicappers Matt Bernier, Mike Beer and I will recap the Breeders' Cup, all the comings and goings from last week's World Thoroughbred Championships. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment will also focus on the two major Breeders' Cup races with potential 2018 Triple Crown implications. The Grade 3 Red Smith Handicap is the DRF.com formulator race of the day. We'll handicap that along with the Grade 3 Commonwealth Turf from Churchill Downs and the Grade 3 Bob Hope Stakes for 2-year-olds at Del Mar. JK's play of the day is a pick 5 at Del Mar. Craig Mikowski's Timeform US Spotlight focuses on the Safely Kept Stakes, one of several major stakes races at Laurel Park on Saturday. Plus we'll have best bets and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate this week with a hot topic, and the hot topic on everybody's mind, still the two-day Breeders' Cup extravaganza from last week. Let's break some numbers down. We'll take a look at the winners starting on Friday, and some things got hot right away. Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile Gents, Battle of Midway pays $30.40. Mendelssohn paid $11.60. Nice performance in the Juvenile Turf. Mike, you like Forever Unbridled in the Distaff. More Spirit, Matt, was terrible in the Dirt Mile.
Yeah, he was just one of those horses leading into the weekend that did you hear anyone say anything positive about the horse?
I did.
Where he had been gone for so long, you even had some reservations about him, even if you liked him, the fact that he had been gone for so long, they had missed all these sort of plans with him, then 6 straight gate works. This is a professional horse at this point, and you're right, he just never picked his feet up on Friday.
Forever Unbridled, Mike, you liked her. She was solid. She was not the favorite, however. We're going to take a look at the winners on Saturday, and chaos really started to reign on Saturday. Take a look at some of these prices, beginning with Caledonia Road at $36.60, and those prices just kept going up. Stormy Liberal, a giant upset in the Turf Sprint, and then if you have Bar of Gold, good for you. $135.40 to win. Bar of Gold's first win on a faster track, first win against non-New York breds. Uhaida, Matt, you like that one. You went back-to-back with Roy H. World Approval got it done as the chalk. And then more big prices. Good Magic, Talismanic, a little bit more logical result at the end of the day with Gun Runner winning the Classic. But Mike, I mean, listen, you get juicy prices in the Breeders' Cup. I don't think a lot of people expected the favorites to run this poorly.
A little bit of chaos, yeah. That was the most surprising thing. Not just that you got some horses winning at big price. I think that happens in the Breeders' Cup just because there are so many good horses around and horses get lost in the shuffle. It was just way more surprising to see so many favorites just run horribly, and that doesn't even count. I personally felt like all 3 of Baffert's favorites, who all ran terrible. I felt like they were all vulnerable, but that doesn't excuse the performances they put in necessarily. And then you just had some other horses who just they were pretty bad.
Let's take a look at the performances of the favorites on this 2-day card. There were only 2 winning favorites of the 13 races, and I believe only 4 of them hit the board. Here's Friday. Happily, she had some excuses. She had all kinds of traffic trouble finishing 14th. More Spirit was simply awful from start to finish. Mendelssohn came home as a solid favorite, 9-2, tepid favorite. She got it done. And then a late, just flat from start to finish. Disappointing a late, disappointing Stellar Wind.
Yeah, Stellar Wind I think was even worse than Elate was. Elate, I can at least just say, you know what, it wasn't that she just bombed, she just never really threatened. Stellar Wind was done with a half mile to go, and now you've got to start to look at it and say, John Sadler's numbers in the Breeders' Cup, they're not very good. My goodness, if a horse like Stellar Wind is going to completely drop an egg like that, as well as Accelerate, who was in the Dirt Mile, man, tread lightly.
Before we go to the Saturday favorites and how most of them bomb, let's talk about the state of the racetrack and if there was a bias on the main track Friday and Saturday. Personally, at least on Friday, I thought the inside was not the place to be. I thought it was a little bit better on Saturday. Mike, you thought the inside was not the place to be both days.
Yeah, I thought it was bad, really bad both days. Certainly on Friday, you didn't want to be in there. Matt just sort of referenced Stellar Wind. Not that it's a total excuse for her performance, but she was sort of down on that rail the entire way. She was bad. I thought it was maybe even worse on Saturday. I mean, I just don't think you wanted to be down there. And I think there are several horses. It'll really pay to go back through the replays very closely, these Breeders' Cup races, and find the horses that were stuck down on the inside in the main track because they were badly compromised.
Matt, let's talk more about that as we throw up the favorites from the Saturday card. You can say that the rail might have worked against Moonshine Memories, the 2-1 favorite, the horse to beat in the Juvenile Fillies. She went right to the front. I thought it was a crafty ride from Flavien Prat, but she just tired very badly, unlike her.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I don't even know if it was just like the inside rail, the innermost part of the track. I think you could even go out to the 2-path where that was probably less advantageous. And like you say, well, a horse like Moonshine Memories and Heavenly Love, who's also in that race, they were toward the inside. They stopped terribly going around the far turn. And some of these other runners, Dreyfung, I understand, I was a little bit dubious going in, and maybe he just didn't have the kind of speed he needed to get to the front, but he was toward the inside as well. He had a number of horses that for one reason or another, either they were down on the inside or they just didn't feel like firing their A game. They were really kind of compromised and just threw in some major clunkers.
Lady Eli had a lot of traffic going out of the chute and into the stretch the first time. That compromised her finish. Bolt d'Oro extremely wide going into the first turn, pretty much wide all the way around the track. I thought he tried very hard, but a lot of disappointing performances. Mike, who's most disappointing? Lady Aurelia, Unique Bella, Arrogate?
It's hard to pick one that was most disappointing. Maybe in a lot of ways it was Lady Aurelia, just because I didn't see a real excuse for her. I'm going to say that the most disappointing one, just because there was no real excuse for him, was Highland Reel in the turf. He got a great trip in that race over a turf course that he's supposed to love, and they took him clear in the stretch. And he didn't really fight. He didn't get beat badly. He was still trying all the way to the end. I thought he was disappointing in that race, considering the trip that he got.
Matt, you'd have to say Lady Aurelia was disappointing. She came in, she was the bee's knees. John Velasquez gave her a great trip. She was in prime position to fire, and there was nothing there when he pushed the button.
That's kind of the reason that I think she was the most disappointing, because you're supposed to do some running, and at no point did she pick her feet up, which, again, at 5/8 of a mile against the horses that we've seen over here in the States for a number of years, going 5/8 of a mile on the turf, she's supposed to be better than them, and not only was she not competitive, she didn't run at all.
Let's get positive. Forget about all this negativity, all these disappointing performances from these beaten favorites. Matt, you thought you saw a future star, a 2-year-old, and it wasn't in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. You think the Kentucky Derby, a major Kentucky Derby contender, Aidan O'Brien's got one this year.
I don't know if he's going to be a major contender, but I think at least it's worth considering Mendelssohn going forward, because this is going to be the most dirt sort of oriented pedigree that Aidan O'Brien's had. You see him down there in the juvenile turf. He's working at a beautiful trip. He's eventually just going to tip out to the 2 or 3 path and go on with this. He's very lightly raced, and keep in mind this year they're implementing that sort of road to the Kentucky Derby over in Europe. I'm going to call it basically Aidan O'Brien's path to get to the Derby. This horse, if you've been living under a rock, you don't realize this. He's a half to beholder. He's by Scat Daddy. They paid $3 million for him. Again, I'm not suggesting, if you don't believe in those horses coming over, I'm not going to argue with you, but to me, he feels like the one that is best bred or has the most potential as far as this path for O'Brien is concerned.
Mike Gunrunner's just had a fantastic season since coming back from Dubai. He finally emerged from Arrogate's shadow. I mean, he ran a complete race in the Breeders' Cup Classic from start to finish, just taking pressure every step, and he was extending at the finich.
Yeah, he was just a really nice performance for a horse who just put together a really strong second half of the year in 2017, and he's a well-deserved horse of the year now after this Breeders' Cup Classic win for him. You know, it's a little bit disappointing that, you know, the Arrogate of old just couldn't re-find himself at the end of the year, so he didn't get that marquee matchup in the biggest race of the year. But I think that takes nothing away from what Gunrunner did, Whitney, Woodward, Breeders' Cup Classic to close out his career, although I guess he has one more start coming up.
For many fans, many horse players, the Breeders' Cup certainly the highlight of the year, but it can be bittersweet for many fans because a lot of racing stars go off to the breeding shed. We won't see them race anymore, which is why I always look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the stars of tomorrow. And as we see in the stretch run of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, then we got 3 good ones this year. Here's Good Magic. I know Good Magic's a maiden coming in, but just let's talk about the backstory. Chad Brown trained. He's by Curlin. He cost $1 million. He was already grade 1 placed coming into this race. We talked about Solomini, the runner-up for Bob Baffert, and all of the immense potential he has. I still think he might have the most long-term potential of any 2-year-old as it pertains to a race like the Kentucky Derby. Just a big, good-looking horse that should appreciate extra distance. And let's not hold Bolt d'Oro's loss against him. Yes, he was a short-priced favorite. Yes, a lot of folks thought he was the most likely winner of the Breeders' Cup card, but he didn't have a very easy trip. And you could tell by that replay, he was really digging and trying all the way down the lane. I think there are still a lot of good things for Bolt d'Oro, as well as the 2-year-olds. Nicole Russo will give her thoughts on the 2 major 2-year-old races, the Juvenile and the Juvenile Fillies, a little bit later on. But now, let's get to some handicapping with the Red Smith. Let's take a look at the field for the feature race at Aqueduct on Saturday, which is also the DRF.com formulator race of the day. It's the Grade 3 Red Smith Handicap at 1 3/8 miles on the turf. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded stakes races this weekend, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. And for free formulator past performances of the Grade 3 Red Smith Handicap, head on over to the Race of the Day event page on drf.com. Matt, Chad Brown's got 2 in here. What else horses new, two major contenders. Money Multiplier was a horse good enough to compete in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. On his best, he's probably the horse to beat in the Red Smith. As I mentioned to Mike in the stakes preview, I said, for some reason, I don't like him. Why don't we like him?
I don't trust him either, but it is one of those instances where you go through and look at his running lines. He's got all the names in there. You can go all the way back and you see the Flintshires of the world in there, and you see Highland Reel, and you see all these other names in there. But I've got to be honest with you. I mean, he's just the kind of horse that if you take him at a short price, he's probably going to end up hurting you. He's one, I suppose, if you told me he's going to be 5-6 to 1, yeah, maybe I'd be a little bit intrigued, but then I would look at it the other way and say he's not supposed to be 5 or 6 to 1. To me, he's just the kind of horse that you're supposed to be against in a race like this.
I believe he's 5 to 2 on the morning line, and we're going to go back to his race 2 starts back, the Sword Dancer, and here he is on the outside. He's going to come with a solid enough late run. He gets strange with his lead changes. You'll see him flip a couple of times in the stretch, but this is a grade 1 race. Maybe not the strongest grade 1, Mike, we've seen, but he certainly fits with the horses in against in the Red Smith, and he might have a ground excuse for his most recent race.
Yeah, I think you can give him that excuse for the last one. He doesn't like it if it's less than firm. He didn't get that. As far as that race goes, we just looked at, I don't know, I thought he ran fine in there. He got a really good trip. You saw him take his shot at a dead aim all through the stretch. He was interesting. He never even got by to the lead. He finished second at the end. Never got by the horse that was in front of him until he got past in the stretch. Then he got up for second. Listen, he's the horse to beat in here. He's just not my kind of horse.
Mike, let's talk about the horse that is your kind of horse in this race, and that's the one on the far outside, the number 12, Messi.
Let's not go crazy.
I mean, listen, Messi's been a little bit of a disappointment throughout his career, but if you look at his recent starts, there are ways to say he's had some excuses, and he's actually run quite well.
Yeah, I think he has. Listen, I'm not a huge Messi guy either. I sort of feel like the more I went through this race, the more I just felt like I had to give him one more chance in this race. I've been doing a little bit of chasing of him, and I've been chasing him since this replay that I want to show you right here. This is his start opening day at Saratoga, and I didn't really like him. I got to be honest, I didn't really like him coming into this race, but he just got a terrible trip. You saw the position he was in there at the top of the stretch. They walked on the lead in front of this horse. He wound up somehow being last at the top of the stretch, and he's just going to be really unlucky here, closing all kinds of ground down on the inside at the end, and he's just going to fall short. I thought he was really unlucky in this race, so I wound up chasing him for a couple of starts after this, and I still think he ran really well in those races with excuses. I decided to give him one more chance in here, but let's be honest, it's Messi. He won't get another chance after Saturday.
After that Saratoga race, you went up to Woodbine. It looked like it would be a solid spot. You had a strong European in Hawkbill, who I think was an odds-on favorite, Matt, but a lot of folks thought off the trip at Saratoga, at least we would hear from Messi, and guess what? Trouble again.
Trouble again. We're going to take it from the top of the stretch, and you're going to notice that he's in behind horses, and he's got nowhere to go. Jose Ortiz has got 2 fistful of him right now, and I think I agree with you guys. There's an opportunity to angle out into the clear right about now, and he just, for some reason, decides not to go on with it. Instead, he's going to shift back down to the inside. At that point, you've given the top 2. I understand it's only a length or 2 or 3 lengths, but the point is, it's going to take a lot to run these horses down, especially a horse like Hawkbill, who I know he doesn't win, and it's a disappointing effort, but he's going to see out the distance. That's never going to be a problem. You see him try on, and he comes on at the end, and he's going to end up being beaten by 3/4 of a length. And then most recent start, draw a line through that was over soft going, and he was on the lead for some reason. He's going to need to work something out from the outside post going 3 turns, but I'm with Mike. I'm going to give him a shot, and really it's more because I don't like anybody else in the race.
Like both of you, I want to price. I want to go against the favorite. I think horses like Money Multiplier and Messi, maybe we've seen their best. I'm not sure we've seen the best from my top selection, and that's the number 7, Spring Quality, going out for trainer Graham Motion. Now, this horse made his turf debut in his last start. That was the Knickerbocker, going 1 1/8 miles. We swing into the stretch. There's not a lot of pace going on, and he's very wide. As you see from all those divots coming up, this is a less than firm turf course, and in my opinion, less than ideal conditions for Spring Quality. As you see, there's not a lot of acceleration. I think he's more of a grinder that's really going to be helped by the additional distance in the Red Smith, and he is bred for it. He's a half to Holiday Star, trained by Motion to become a multiple graded stakes winner at 12 furlongs. Holiday Star was 3rd in the Red Smith Handicap in 2015. I think this horse is going to relish firm turf, additional distance, and I think he has the tactical speed to sit close to the pace, and he's only run 9 or 10 times. I think he has some upside potential as well. I'll go with a little bit of an upset with Spring Quality. Let's go to Nicole Russo. Her Pedigree Pick segment this week focuses on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and how those races may impact next year's Triple Crown.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. And of course, we're coming off last week's big Breeders' Cup weekend at Del Mar. Good Magic winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Caledonia Road winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Earned 20 points respectively toward next year's Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. And it's really never too early to start talking about how these horses are going to handle the added distance as we get into the spring, especially with prep season really just around the corner for these horses. Let's start by taking a quick look back at Good Magic as you continue to evaluate him. Really came down the stretch strongly in the juvenile, and he was a maiden coming into the race, had been second last out in a Grade 1 in New York, was really knocking at the door, and he certainly improved with that experience and going 2 turns. Looking at his pedigree, his female family maybe slanted a bit more toward middle distances, but it is a very classy female family. Glinda the Good was a multiple stakes winner. She's a half to several stakes winners, including Grade 3 winner Take the Ribbon, who took the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. To the family of Arkansas Derby winner Papa Clem. But I think where Good Magic is really going to get the added stamina he's going to need going forward is from his sire, Curlin, 2-time Horse of the Year, Classic winner himself. And Curlin has produced a Classic winner or Classic placed runner in each of his crops of racing age to date so far. We'll see if Good Magic and others can continue the trend that you see here on your screen. Of course, his group highlighted by Palace Malice, who won the Belmont Stakes out of his first crop, and by Exaggerator, who after running a good second in the Kentucky Derby came back to win the Preakness last year. Now, Caledonia Road, from another family that's had some recent success in the Classics, another filly who had really been knocking on the door, ran a good second 2 separation of powers in the Frisette, going a 1-turn mile at Belmont, finished willingly, and also took a step forward with the 2 turns in the juvenile fillies. Caledonia Road continues an outstanding year with his daughter's 4-sire Quality Road. Quality Road, of course, the sire of this year's Kentucky Oaks winner, Abel Tasman, who came back to win the Acorn, the Coaching Club American Oaks, and then run second in the Breeders' Cup Distaff to likely champion Forever Unbridled. So you don't need to look any further than that to know that the Kentucky Oaks distance should be well within Caledonia Road's scope. 2 exciting young horses. Well, of course, we'll continue to analyze them throughout the spring here on DRF Video and elsewhere on DRF.com.
You asked, we listened. DRF Plus has more flexible subscription options. Use DRF Plus Basic for exclusive news and analysis, including our DRF Live real-time news feed. Or go deeper with DRF Pro and unlock buyers, closer looks, picks, and reports, including the DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off the plan of your choice. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about the DRF Plus subscription plans at drf.com/plus.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's move to the feature race at Churchill Downs on Saturday by taking a look at the field for the Grade 3 Commonwealth Turf. This race at 1 mile and a 16th, $100,000 for 3-year-olds. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Guys, as you see, 4 to 5 on the morning line for the horse to beat. That's Mr. Misunderstood. We'll get to him in a minute. Mike, the number 8 Giant Payday is the second choice at the wagering at 5 to 1. This is a horse that occasionally comes with a big late run. I'm not sure he gets enough pace, but as we see by his performance in the Mystic Lake Derby, give him some pace, he'll kick.
Yeah, he comes with a nice run in this race to close this field down at the end. I like this performance from him. I feel like if this race was taking place I don't know, 6 months ago, I might have taken a longer look at this horse. As it stands now, and I like this performance from him, it just feels like he's in pretty tough here against a legit favorite who's going to be a very short price. He ran against Misunderstood in his next start after this win, and he was just no match for that horse. Kind of hard for me to see him turn the tables, but you're right. If he catches some pace, he will come running at the end.
I mean, horses like Giant Payday and Parlor, they're solid, but Matt, they really haven't improved much since their sort of heyday back in the spring. Let's talk about Mr. Misunderstood. Boy, Brad Cox has done a great job with this horse. 6 for 6 on turf. Just has managed him brilliantly.
You could have had him for $30,000 at the end of his 2-year-old campaign and a non-win. 2 lifetime, and all he's done is come back and just be a monster on the turf. This is his run 2 starts back in the Super Derby, and okay, it's a small field, but guess what? He absolutely destroys this field and wins the way you're supposed to as a favorite. And he came back and he ran just as well in the Jefferson Cup. The one thing I'll say about the Jefferson Cup, popped back to his left lead late, which I don't know, maybe that was the mile and an eighth, and now getting back to a mile and 16th is going to kind of alleviate that issue. I just looked at this field, Dan, and I said, I don't know anybody else that I can take. I don't want to take a shot against this horse. I'm not betting him at 4 to 5, obviously, but I think he's going to be very, very tough.
Mike, this horse just ticks all the boxes, doesn't he?
Yeah, he just looks really tough for me to beat. Obviously, when you're talking about an odds-on favorite, you want to look around a little bit and see if you can get involved with somebody else. I couldn't find that horse. Again, if it was 3 or 4 months ago, maybe Parlor, my old friend Parlor, I would have tried to talk myself into him. I can't do it. I'm not going to try and beat the favorite.
I don't want to have too much money in against Mr. Misunderstood, but I do think that the 7 Tis a Slam at least deserves a little bit of recognition. He's done most of his dirty work on the synthetic, winning last time out the Ontario Derby, and we're going to take a look at that race right now where he turns the tables on the horse that beat him in the Queen's Plate. That's the filly Holy Helena. Tis a Slam, as you see in the Ontario Derby, wins very, very comfortably. He has won on turf in the past. You got to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine. I think it was the Cup and Saucer last year at 2. But he is capable on the turf. I'm hoping his tactical speed puts him in close attendance to Mr. Misunderstood, and maybe they'll start racing at the same time. He's got to step up his form on the turf if he is going to upset the favorite. But I will take a very small stab against Mr. Misunderstood with the number 7. That is Tis a Slam. Let's move from turf to dirt, from Churchill Downs to Del Mar for some 2-year-old stakes action in the Bob Hope. Let's take a look at the field for the feature race at Del Mar on Saturday. It's a graded stakes race for 2-year-olds, the Grade 3 Bob Hope Stakes. $100,000 is the purse. The race is at 7 furlongs. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, Bob Baffert, I believe, won this race last year with Mastery. I'm pretty sure he won it there. His horse in here, the number 2 Mourinho, ran too well to lose last time.
Yeah, it was just one of those instances where you won the battle and you lost the war, because he was out there on the front end 3 wide basically, and he ended up putting away the other pace setters. And we're going to take a look at that replay now, only to find himself getting a little bit tired at the end of the lane and he get run down. I think it was a giant effort. When I initially saw the buyer come back as a 70, I said, oof, not a good deal. You lost at 1 to 5. And then I watched the race and I go, well, I mean, what else could he possibly have done? I'm not going to go as far as to call him a special one. It was like his namesake Mourinho, but I think he is quite good, and I think if he's able to get out there to an easy enough lead here this time around, he's going to be tough to run down.
Natural double Messi Mourinho on Saturday, but you're right. I thought he ran too well to lose. He did all the dirty work in that race. Bob Baffert takes the blinkers off. That's a move that has worked very well for Baffert in the past with his 2-year-olds. And in each race that you see on the expanded stakes previews, we have the Timeform US Pace Projector. This time around, this horse is projected to get an easy lead, and that could work against the horse that we saw run him down in the Speakeasy, and your top pick in this race, Mike. Beautiful Shot.
Yeah, I think if you just go on traditional handicapping, you're really supposed to be against Beautiful Shot this time after the setup that he got last time when he did take advantage to beat Marino last time. On the other hand, you're talking about who's probably going to be 3rd choice in this race. I think there's at least some chance that Marino gets hooked up again with Runaway, another fast horse. And then you also have this race to contend with. This is Beautiful Shot's debut, and I don't know about you guys, but I was pretty impressed by this run. This is a horse who got off to a terrible start in this race. He puts in a pretty big run here. The last 1/8 of a mile through on the inside. DeSormo's going to find some room for this horse, and he is going to finish. And to me, he finishes like a good horse. He finished like a good horse in this race, and I know that he had a setup last time. He finished like a good horse in that race, too. He's 3rd choice in this race. I'm going to take him right back.
You don't see many 2-year-olds win their career debuts like that, especially those trained by Keith DeSormo, who usually gets them cranked up 2nd, 3rd, 4th time out. This horse has a good deal of upside potential, and if Mourinho gets hooked early early, it's quite possible Beautiful Shot will run them down again. People keep telling me experience counts. If that's the case, then my top pick can't lose. It's Runaway, who's 4 for 5 lifetime, and the only loss came at the hooves of Bolt D'Oro, who of course was the beaten favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Runaway had to work last time out at Los Alamitos, and we're going to go back to that race. The Barrett's Juvenile, you see as a 1-5 favorite right now, he is in deep water. He is last, he is angling to the outside, but once he gets in the clear, he finally kicks it in, and he is going to get up in the shadow of the wire. And I just think this is a case where this is a horse that didn't like the racetrack and overcame anyway. It's quite possible that Runaway, by Runaway and Hyde, is just one of those precocious 2-year-olds, and the others are starting to catch up to him right now. But I think he has enough tactical speed where he can keep Mourinho in his sights, get the jump on Beautiful Shot. We'll see if there's one more left for Runaway, the number 3 in the Bob Hope Stakes. JK's play of the day, it's a Del Mar pick 5. Then we'll move to Craig Milkowski's Timeform U.S. Spotlight, where he takes a look at the Safely Kept Stakes, one of a handful of big races at Laurel on Saturday.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Sorry about my voice, it's a little Breeders' Cup hangover. It's a little bit of an emotional letdown after the Breeders' Cup. It's always fun, looking forward to that. My body is rejecting me as well here, so excuse my voice. I'll be quick, short, and sweet here. We're going to go to Del Mar. There's 2 horses that I really like early in the sequence. It's convinced me to play a pick 5 at Del Mar. 3 legs are just going to be a little bit spready. Hope for a little bit of a good price, but I'm going to have 2 singles in the sequence. In the first leg, I'm going to use the 1, the 4, the 7, and the 8. It's a maiden turf race, going 2 turns. Usually I look for pedigree here. I look for previous performance where they've run well, or I look for jockeys that I think that understand that Del Mar turf course. As you heard probably a ton last week, it's a unique turf course, a turf course that I think if a rider has a better understanding for it, can usually excel in. So like I said, I use the 1, the 4, the 7, and the 8 in that spot. That is one of the spread spots there. In the second race is a 16 claimer. Here's one of my singles. The 5 horse, Dangerously Close. This horse is dropping in for $16,000. First time for a tag for Dan Blacker. It's Harris Farms. When I see horses make that drastic drop for big operations, it's not so much a negative to me. It's a situation where that's not the type of horse they're interested in having, the type of horse they're interested in campaigning. This horse's previous performance in this field, Timeform U.S. on the lead, and I think he's going to be, her extremely tough to beat here. So I'm going to single the 5, Dangerously Close. In the third leg, we're going to use 4 horses again: the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 7. There's a 2-year-old maiden special weight race going 6 furlongs. It's a little bit tough, especially in Southern California, the workout reports and understanding which one of these horses are going to be meant. But like I said, I look for pretty much the same thing. I look for trainers who early with young horses. I look for horses that have speed in previous starts. And I look for horses that have 5 furlong or 6 furlong workouts. It's kind of a thing to look for, but kind of the thing that I'm using in a spread situation like this when I have 2 horses I'm going to be single. So like I said, I'm using the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 7 in race 3. In race, a little bit of a tricky one, a starter allowance race. Timeform US projects the pace to be a little bit hot. I'm going to use 5 horses here. Another spread situation, the 3, 6, 8, 9, and 10. 3, Red King with Flavian Pratt, a jockey that excels well on that surface. Another one that I'm using is Corey Nakatani. Those are 2 guys, see them show up on a turf. Excuse me, they're ones that I want to make sure to consider. So I'm going to use the 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, hope for a little bit of a price there. And then in race 5, the final leg, I'm going to single here. You probably saw this horse's name on the entries when you were looking at Breeders' Cup. The horse's name is Marino, for Bob Baffert. Ran a huge time form figure first time out, 110. That's really impressive for a 2-year-old. Pushing out the 7, I think he's going to show enough speed to clear this field. And we know what happens when a Baffert horse can clear the field. I think he should be extremely tough in here and should be a fair price, considering Runaway should take a lot of money, and Beautiful Shot is one that should take some money as well. So there should be a little bit of value left, a little bit of meat on the bone, even though this should be a short price horse. There it is. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to look at my old stomping grounds, Laurel Park. I'm going to look at the $100,000 Safely Kept Stakes being run at 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. One of the things to note about this race is that the race rating is a 114, so this is a really strong race for, it's not even graded, I guess they'd call it a listed stake, but it drew a really top field, and it also drew a very big field. You can see in the notes there that preference goes by earnings, and that there will be could be an also eligible list, and we did in fact draw two also eligibles into this race. I want to look at the pace projector first, and you can see, which isn't surprising given the field size, that it's predicted to be a very fast-paced race. With 14 horses, that's bound to happen. It's a sprint, so it's not a big surprise, but that is going to factor into my selection today. One thing to note with the Timeform US pace projector is we don't show also eligibles on the pace projector, but as scratches occur, and if any of them draw in, we will add them. The first horses I want to look at are the ones that are shown in the front of the pace projector. The first one is Miss Locust Point, named after a part of Baltimore, which actually grew up pretty close to Locust Point. But this is a 3-year-old filly, as I mentioned, and the reason I point that out again is you can see she ran a 114, which does fit nicely in here based on the race rating. But she also did it in December of her 2-year-old season, so about 10 months ago. And one thing I like to do with speed figures is when young horses are improving, I like to add, and if they mature as they should or as could be expected, what could they run? And I usually like to use about a point a month just to be conservative. Maybe you could go a little more even. That would put this horse clearly as a class of the field. The one thing to look out for, though, is the layoff. I'm not a big fan of the 7 furlong distance, and I would be more of a fan if there was another speed drawn into the race. Let's look at a couple of the other horses. The first one is Moonlit Song. This horse is kind of the queen of Charlestown right now. She's run 12 times in her career, all of them there at Charlestown, and she's won 9 of those starts. She's a speedy horse. She's game as they come. She's very dangerous. But one thing to notice is those races at Charlestown, several of them have been in West Virginia bred races. The race ratings for those races are all a lot lower than today's. And then you can see her speed figures. Her best speed figure thus far is a 110, and that's just not quite good enough in here. So while I do think that she'll be a pace factor and definitely part of what we expect to be a fast pace, I don't really think she's a contender for the win. The other horse that's shown also ran last out at Charlestown, but that was kind of a ship-in, and that's a Stroll in the Park. Stroll in the Park went down for the Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks, one of the big races that they run there on the season. And while she set a really fast pace, you can see the fractions in red, 139 to the quarter mile, 126 here. And one thing I haven't mentioned, keep in mind those races at Charlestown are run around 2 turns. If anything above 4.5 furlongs at Charlestown is around 2 or even 3 turns as you get in the route races. So it is a little bit different here. I'll have a long straightaway, but this horse has shown speed plenty times in her career. Both her wins came when she was right up on the lead. So I suspect she's another one that's going to contribute to the hot pace. And that's what leads me to the horse I think's the one I'm going to want to bet. Of course, it depends on odds, and morning line isn't available yet, but this is one I think if I can get in the 7-2, 4-1, maybe a 5-1 range, I will definitely be betting, and that's Too. She is the top-rated late pace horse in here on the Timeform US late pace ratings. And she's got a few things going for her. She won a sprint at 5.5 furlongs back at Delaware. She came from well off the pace, and then her connection stretched her out. She went she's been going 2 turns the last 4 times in a row. Definitely against better competition, last out in the Grade 1 Spinster. She actually made a nice move in that race, got within a length after 6 furlongs before fading out, and ran a really nice 116 Timeform US speed figure. So based on that information, she's the horse I'm really looking to bet in here. May try her in an exacta box with Miss Locust Point coming off that long layoff, giving her what I consider a class edge based on that 114 she ran back in December. Just depends how much she gets bet, but Too will be the top pick here. That's it for Timeform US this week. Now let's go back to Dan in the studio.
Best bet time here on Out of the Gate. Mike Beer, Naira analyst. You're going to the big A.
Yeah, race number 6 at the Big A. It's for maiden 2-year-olds going 7 furlongs. I'm going to give Variant Perception for Chad Brown a chance here in his second career start. This horse debuted at Saratoga. Midway through that meet, he caught a race with a really fast Steve Asmussen first-time starter, blew out to the front. Variant Perception, I think if you go back, the more that I went back and went through that replay, I just sort of felt like when I watched it, he was a little green, a horse who I thought would really benefit from a race. He got green in the stretch. He got between horses, almost like he didn't want to come through. And then once he got clear, he just sort of ran on to the end. I think he benefits from having a race. I think he benefits from getting 7 furlongs. He's really bred for distance by Curlin. I'm hoping this horse needed that race, takes a step forward, and breaks his maiden second time out.
Matt, you're going with one of your favorite sons. He's a 2-year-old. He's only run a few times. He's already been a horse watch on Out of the Gate. Tell us about Barry Lee.
He's been on the show, what, 15 times already? He's only started 4 times in his career. The James Lewis down at Laurel on Saturday afternoon. It's a small field, only 6 horses. And the reason that I'm going to go with one of the choices anyway, I don't think he's going to be the favorite. We're going to take a look at his most recent run. This is in the Futurity. You're going to see him in behind horses right now. Joel Rosario had the mount, and I think you probably could have had him a little bit more forwardly placed, but keep in mind, this was on the heels of his win in the Arlington, Washington Futurity, in which he came from off the pace. The blinkers went on this day here at Belmont. And okay, he's no match for Engage, who's a Chad horse that looks like he could be pretty good on the front end, but I love everything else that he did in here, and just because I almost feel like losing a race early on is kind of a good thing. Now there's no expectations. I think he's a nice horse. I think he'll continue to move forward. He might be a playable price in here. He's 5-2 on the morning line. I'm okay with 5-2.
I'm going to go to Laurel as well for my best bet. Race number 5, number 10, that's Gibby. This is a 2-year-old filly trained by Scott Lake, getting blinkers for the first time. And Lake doesn't do this that often. Over the past 5 years, blinkers on 2-year-olds on dirt. I believe he's 3 for 8, which is obviously a good number with a positive ROI. This horse has speed. There's a lot of speed in this race for 2-year-old fillies. I think this one's the speed of the speed. Here's her career debut at Monmouth Sprinting. She's a half to Giuseppe the Great, so extra distance shouldn't be a problem for this horse. But she shows good speed in here, and she wins in very comfortable fashion. Now, she has lost her subsequent 2 starts, excuses in both of them. She ran at Laurel, she went to her nose at the start, rushed up to duel for the lead, and tired. Last time out at Park, she was involved in a multi-horse pace scrum, emerged from that duel with the lead, only to be run down in the shadow of the wire. There's pace, but I do think that she is the speed of the speed in race number 5 at Laurel. That's the number 10, Gibby. You can follow the latest DRF TV offerings on Twitter at DRF Video, and for all the news and notes this weekend, follow DRF at DRF Inside Post on Twitter as well. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.